I just created a little PowerPoint on stress, PTSD, and TBI. I'm going to talk about this briefly and just give you a little overview and then discuss this for your health. So what is stress, right? Well, a lot of people hear the name PTSD and they think of combat war veterans. Unfortunately, a small child that's been abused, or a victim of domestic violence, somebody that's being bullied at home, bullying at work. There's different types of PTSD. And the TBI stands for traumatic brain injury. Anybody, you could be in a car accident, you could be in a volcanic eruption, you could have, a traumatic event. Now, I do want to say that there is hope for these unfortunate things that happen in life. So, first of all, stress affects your entire body, okay? And I would like to let you know that when you have an acute stress reaction to an event that is traumatic, your sympathetic system, as part of your autonomic nervous system. Now let's go back and look at this diagram real quick, okay? So basically, your mind and body are connected in many ways, and the way you perceive things, the way you think, affects some things go on in your body, biochemical reactions. So down here on the right here is the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic division is to the left here in this diagram and to the right. Now you have other things going on in you, but this is what happens. You have a nervous system that's going to and from. There's like a circuit board going on there. Through your brain is communicating and sending out electrochemical signals based on information, smell, sight, sounds, the five senses. You you touch something, you feel it, it's hot, so on and so forth. So what has this got to do with PTSD? Well, it's something that you sense and perceive, and it's kind of at a subconscious level that it causes changes in your body. Now, if you have the acute stress, that's the trigger that initially happens, right? So what happens in this is that you get the fight or flight, and it happens through your adrenal and your kidneys. Your adrenal gland will release a stimulating hormone that increases your blood pressure, your heart rate, and it slows your digestion. It also increases blood flow. It's kind of hard to explain without a better diagram. I'm going to get you a better diagram in a minute. Okay, so with chronic stress, which is a little bit different, you've got the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus. It's something in your brain, and pituitary gland and your adrenal gland. So these things in your head. Let me jump over here real quick. Okay, here's your brain, right? You have these different glands, and here's a diagram I found on a web search with Google, and it has the parasympathetic here and the sympathetic here. So there's a couple of states, like it's an opposite state on each end, right? So remember, you have two types of stress. You have chronic stress and you have traumatic stress. There's a loop that goes on here, though, because what happens is if you're under chronic stress, you're going to have changes go on as well. And these glands will produce cortisol and suppress the immune system, and it'll reduce swelling. So there's parts that are getting turned on with one part, and then parts that are getting turned off So this one is a diagram of a male, and this is a diagram of a female that I found. Okay, so basically what happens is, have you ever heard of a person getting off, like on being an adrenaline junkie, and they're getting off on that? Well, what happens is when you get in this fight or flight, if you're exposed to like a really near exciting event, but you don't actually, it winds up being okay, like people that race cars and stuff, it causes a lot of blood to flow in your parasympathetic system that gets you excited, okay? And then when you relax with the sympathetic reaction, so basically what happens is they notice that they get an erection, or they get excited going on a scary ride, right? Like a really scary ride, or racing. And they start noticing they get this thrill out of it, and they don't understand that the reason they're getting the thrill is, in nature, when a plant or an animal is under stress, what happens is it will fruit at the last minute, or it'll want to reproduce and perpetuate. So the creature or the person will live. So it's sort of an animal thing that's going on with people and a plant. It's a natural process in the body due to stress, okay? There's good stress, there's bad stress. You need a little bit of stress, you know, the way stuff's going. But this is kind of like an outlier. Okay, so with PTSD, if you've already got PTSD, you went through a really traumatic event, okay? You know, you're having nightmares, flashbacks, whatever. This is going to get worse or exacerbated by additional stress because you're already shell-shocked, right? And I just wanted to say that, and I'm going to emphasize it again, military soldiers are not the only one that get PTSD. People who have been raped, teenagers that had adult men bigger than them and older than them, force them to do stuff, get PTSD. Victims of battery from spousal in the family, violence in the family, victims of crime, victims of war, you know, bystanders that watch it too. They can vicariously get it. If you are in a terrible wreck, any kind of plane crash, whatever, you know, just a really traumatic event. And if you witness someone you love, or if you witness somebody else going through a trauma, and it can be, you know, right now it can be the medical doctors, the medical personnel, the nurses that are having to treat patients that have gone to the point of no return, and all they can do is pretty much make them comfortable. And they're seeing a lot of that, and they're working long rounds, they're not getting enough sleep. That's enough to start getting PTSD when you're watching a pandemic. Anything that's out of your control, that's tragic, will rock your mind enough. Now, not everybody gets it. Some people are more resilient, and they practice good health hygiene, and they can go through an earthquake, a natural disaster, or something that will trigger PTSD. You know, people that have went through Hurricane Sandy, that's a form of PTSD for some of them. Other people are more resilient, and they don't get the PTSD from it. But the people that get PTSD, they have trouble functioning in society. They wind up losing their jobs and their homes, and they don't know what's going on. So we have to be as understanding as we can with them and try to get help. So we need to recognize the symptoms. What are the symptoms of PTSD? First of all, somebody who's gone through an extremely stressful event. either they themselves or someone close to them. Like if you had witnessed your child get run over by a vehicle or something, and they went to the hospital, that, anything, even if you're a survivor of someone who had, uh, it just depends, okay? Each person is different, and it can be a cumulative thing. You could have a series of really tragic events going on, send you into grief, and you develop a lot of these symptoms, but only a medical professional like a PhD, a clinical psychologist, or a licensed psychiatrist probably could run some tests. They have tests they can give you to see if you have it, or see if a loved one you have it. If you know someone who's suffering and they're bringing up things that have happened to them, get them help, because PTSD, there are people that have recovered completely from it and led normal functioning lives completely. And there's different degrees, of course, but the other symptom is that it's interfering with your everyday functioning. It causes nightmares, flashbacks, psychological distress, and psychological reactivity. What does that mean? Extra touchy, snapping, that shell-shocked feeling where they can't get enough rest. Essentially, number 3, negative emotional affect, such as inability to recall, some of their brain functioning, decreased ability to enjoy activities before the event, and a constricted affect. Now, the other one is avoidance, persistence, either of the trauma-related event or activities and persons that are similar to the exposure event. Like, for example, let's say a rape victim doesn't want to be around men, and they don't want to go to a party because it happened after a party, and they have anxiety over it really bad. And another symptom here is hyperarousal. So this person will be like really super vigilant. They'll be on top of stuff. They won't be able to relax, and they'll have ability to cope. They'll be anxious. Another symptom is that out of these symptoms, they have to be present for at least a month. Okay, so they can't make a diagnosis initially whether or not this is going to last when you've been exposed to a traumatic event. But if you start getting therapy right away for the tragic event, it might help enough that you won't get full-blown PTSD. Maybe you'll just get something that's treated better. So anyway, the 7th thing is that it's going to be functional significance. It'll interfere with your daily functioning and social and psychological. So that's it for the symptoms. And now we're going to go on to talk about traumatic brain injury. Traumatic brain injury also causes, it's something that happens a lot to people that were in the military, people with football that have contact sports. And I'm not talking about the soccer kind of football that they have over in Europe. I'm talking about American touch football, where they slam into each other and they have elbow pads, knee pads, cleats, and helmets on. Also, you can get a traumatic head injury playing hockey or getting in a car accident, other things other than being at war. Now, there's different degrees. Look at Gabby Giffords. She was shot in the head. She got a traumatic brain injury by a weapon, a gun. She was a congressperson. I can go show you her picture, but that's something that happened in the United States. You can look it up. I'm just going to go through with the PowerPoint, and then if you have any questions, you can post them below. So these symptoms, doctors categorize them as mild, moderate, or severe, and there's different types of brain injuries. There's an open one and a closed one. The closed ones are going to have pressure building up in them more than the open ones. But in any case, you don't want your brain bleeding out. You need to get to a doctor right away if you've had a head injury of any kind. It's very serious. So basically, between the traumatic brain injury and the PTSD, sometimes they're co-occurring. Sometimes people have one or both, okay? The fatigue, the insomnia, the depression, the irritability, the anxiety, it's in both PTSD and TBI. They overlap. Now that you know the signs, please seek medical attention. And just like a virus or an infection, qualified medicine can help you evaluate, get a proper diagnosis and a treatment plan. And it really is important that you get help, because this is not something you should have to live with. It's serious, and I want to thank you for your time and attention to this. And I want to thank all the military soldiers that have laid down their lives and put themselves in harm's way so that we can live free in this country. Appreciate everything you've done. I also appreciate all the medical personnel right now that are on the front lines of the coronavirus, and all the people that have gone through the refiner's fire, so to speak. And I hope that you are able to find happiness, peace, and joy. Love you lots. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.